The fundamental issue that government has is that they need more housing delivered in less time. You can't do that with conventional constructions. We just don't have the capacity. Full stop. We need to actually take a different approach, and we have a different approach.
Let's look at the incremental difference, and we think we can help. We are not the entire answer, never will be, but we can certainly help. And just having the ear for that part of this podcast might end up there.
Welcome to another episode of the Unicorns podcast. On this episode of the Unicorns, we're diving into the future of construction. In particular, smarter, faster construction. PT Blink is not your typical property company. In fact, it describes itself as a tech company. Its tech platform is reinventing how buildings are designed, manufactured, and delivered. In doing so, it's cutting costs, speeding up timelines, and giving asset owners real control. Joining me today are Murray Ellen, the founder of PT Blink, and Wayne Larsen, the CEO. Together, they're leading a bold shift in an industry that's been slow to change. In this episode, we'll talk about how it all started, how the technology works, and how it could play a major role in solving Australia's housing affordability crisis. They've already proven it can be done, and now they're scaling up big time. This is a story of disruption, innovation, and ambition. So let's get into it. Gentlemen, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Murray,
much for having us.
I would like to start with you. Let's go back to the beginning. What was the original spark that led you to start PT Blink? And what problems were you trying to solve in the property and construction space?
Well, the spark actually came from our steel industry. To tell you the truth, I mean, right back in the beginning, I was asked, how do we compete with China? And that was by One Steel before all the troubles they're having as life's gone on. But that key question, how do we compete with China? Steel's a commodity, and they thought I must know because I lived up there a lot. I lived in Hong Kong for 12 or 14 years. You must know, Murray. You lived there. Nice question, guys. So look, how do you compete with China? At the same time, I had a property developer friend, Tony John from Queensland, from Brisbane. He did some significant developments with us. And he asked, why can't we put buildings up fast like they do in China? Mm-hmm. I found those two questions fascinating and came up with a conclusion that the most undervalued commodity that we're dealing with was time. And that's why we called it Blink.
I was going to ask you about that. For those uninitiated, what does the PT Blink actually mean?
Well, if we could generate and create buildings in a fraction of the time that currently takes place, and having lived and worked in construction my entire life, time is not valued. And I mean, seriously decreased time, not by a third, not by 20%, half the time. And you look at the internal rate of return that gives to a developer, and it doubles. Right? So I thought, what a great name, Blink, and it's done. So I went out looking for blink.com, and an optometrist in the US at blink.com. So I had to put the PT in front, which actually stands for post-tensioning, very technical term inside of construction. So people think we're actually a personal training company.
Can you help me with my abs? No, but I can help you with your building.
No, exactly. Part of the thing that we do now is we want to make sure the buildings fit together. Yeah. So we have a thing called a fitness center, and people still think we're a personal training company.
Wayne, what was it that first drew you to PT Blink? What did you like about the business?
Look, my background is in manufacturing, so I come from a fairly long storied history of the supply side into the construction industry. Through our steel industry, I actually worked for One Steel back in the day, Smorgon Steel, when they were operational before they got swallowed up into the bigger One Steel family, and then in the aluminium window and door side of the supply side. So about 25 years of dealing with the downstream impacts of the disorganization and behaviors inside the construction industry. And what I learned in that time was that because of delay, because of late last-minute changes, because of obfuscation and pushing of risk down the supply chain, there's a massive amount of profiteering that takes place. So the opportunity is obvious to me that if you can change the supply chain, change the procurement model, the way that buildings are delivered from a procurement perspective, there's huge opportunities to eliminate wasteful margin and layers of complexity that don't need to be there. So that's really what drew me in the initial sense, and then obviously Murray's charm and wit have got me across the line.
Right.
So for those who are unfamiliar with the business, a question for both of you: what is PT Blink, and how does it work?
I'll do this one. PT Blink is a technology platform. We're a technology company, and we work in two ways. One, we have some IP around a structural form that creates a physical datum for the way buildings go together. So you think of a chassis of a car and how you create a chassis, and then you put parts on that chassis to create the entire car. We're doing that with buildings using our structural form. We also have a digital side of the business, which takes that structural form and digitizes it in a parametric way, which gives owners and developers and designers infinite freedom in how they design both the structure of a building, but then dress that building with a kit of parts of things like facades, bathrooms, stairs, to create a manufactured supply of products that go to site, that get put together at the site rather than constructed at the site.
So in layman's terms, how does your business differ from traditional construction?
So in traditional construction, you send all the men, all the materials, all the machines to the site and try and transform the materials where the building wants to stand. What we do is work with manufacturers to move that value adding offsite and manufacture parts in multiple factories in parallel, but then bring them together to put them together quickly on site. So it's an assembly process, not a construction process.
And Murray, have you found that the industry, and I use that term loosely, struggles with the concept of understanding the value of your technology, what it can actually do, how you can climb this mountain?
Yeah. Well, it's been 9 years now that I've founded Blink, and look, I don't know whether it's a struggle to understand, but it's a struggle to change.
Yes.
And the adoption of this, when we get great people who are like-minded, that's the key word, they jump on really quickly.
Yeah.
Men my age, if you like, who run construction companies and have been doing it that way for a long time, don't necessarily embrace change. But usually change comes when there is drama of some sort. So it's either a dramatic change. There's so many construction companies that have gone broke. Recently, it's well documented. At that point in time, it can be too late. But it's sort of like dealing with taxis and Uber in many ways. It's that sort of disruption. And, at the same time, it's not disruptive because it's sort of the way airplanes have been made for years. It's the way boats are made. It's the way cars have been made for years. And the big difference with Blink, and Wayne's mentioned the word, is parametric, and that's a bit of a weird word, but it means that we're making Lego blocks, but they're stretchy pulley, and you can make any architectural shape you wish. And I think that's the bit that sometimes the building industry finds hard to grasp.
Yes. So what is essentially the thesis of your sales pitch as a business when you go to developers, go to architects, go to industry players? We can do this. How?
I jump in and say, look, it's just faster, better, safer with less waste. But that's it.
That's exactly right. Faster, better, safer with less waste. But doing it in a way that puts maximum return and maximum time back in the hands of the developers.
Yes,
is the key. So, starting from the owners and developers are profiting and trying to procure a building in the most efficient and productive way.
I think this process, so we call it, so it's a technology with the process. And that process we call design, manufacture, integrate. And I think we call integrators new age builders, right? They also benefit significantly. They get more profit. They have less balance sheet problems. They have in and out of projects more. So there's benefits all the way through, isn't there? I mean, designers benefit, manufacturers benefit, integrators benefit.
Yeah, correct.
Can you explain to our listeners the concept of the digital twin? Because you describe yourself as, digital twins being central to your platform. What does that mean?
Yes, I guess in a traditional sense, a digital twin is the digital representation of the finished building, right? We take it a step further and start from that parametric design. So every single assembly that goes into a building has its own digital twin, and the finished building is an aggregation of all of those digital twins. We use that digital twin not only for representing the building in its finished form, but how we manufacture the parts that go into that building, how we procure the parts, how you control the warranties, how you control all of the documentation and operational information that goes with every assembly that makes up that building. But then from a sustainability perspective, the cost of a building, about 20% of that cost is in the capex of the building.
Yeah.
Most of the cost is in the operation of the building. So the digital twin becomes a very, very powerful tool for managing, operating, maintaining that building for the next 40 or 50 years. And that's where the big saving comes from. How you operationally optimize the operation of that building and get the most efficient use of the resources that go into it.
So a follow-up question to that, Wayne, you describe the model as asset owner led. So what does that mean, and how is that different from the typical head contractor led model?
It comes back to decisions through the design process.
Okay.
And how asset owners can engage with the team that is delivering the building.
Right.
So instead of designing the building up to 30 or 40% and then handing it over to someone else to finish the design and hand back a building at the end, they're in control and have full transparency all the way through of those decisions that are being made. So the owner and operator can choose to buy the parts from the manufacturers directly and save a margin on those parts. Issue those to the integrator, who just has to put them together in the way that the manufacturer tells them that they have to go together to meet code and be conformant.
I've seen various press reports saying that PT Blink is the equivalent of the IKEA of construction, or the Uber or the AWS of construction. Is that a fair summary for the punter to try to understand what it is that the business does?
Yeah, I think so. I think, the IKEA of construction has been a catchphrase for some time. When you go to IKEA, you can buy the parts yourself and put them together yourself, or you can have someone do that for you. I guess the only difference I'd make to that is at IKEA, you buy their size shelves. With us, you can buy any shelf size you want.
So can you, maybe both of you, give us an example of the workflow of a project from, an email coming into PT Blink to finished job? What does that journey look like?
It's very fast. That's good. The workflow looks like, so generally we were approached by developers after they have a DA approval. We're getting inquiries now as we become more well known and the process becomes more familiar earlier on. But generally we will work with a developer once they have a DA approved set of plans, and then we will take their plans, take their data, which includes their construction costs, their project timelines, their geotechnical reports, all of that information that they have in mind to deliver that project. And we take that and we decompose that building down into its constituent parts.
Okay.
And then reverse, deliver that building as a set of manufactured parts. So instead of having a reinforced concrete superstructure, they'll have a Blink backbone, which is made off-site and delivered quickly in a different way. Still a structural form. Instead of having a stick-built facade system, they'll get a prefabricated facade system that conforms precisely back to the structure. So we give them a kit of parts delivery methodology instead of a D&C delivery methodology. So that happens very early on.
Yes.
Once we've done that, we'll have an idea of what the deliverables will be for that project. how fast, what rough costs, what the overall IRR return for the developer will look like. The developers will then either like it or they'll say, thanks, but no thanks. If they like it, then we jump into what we call a deep dive. And that is a fairly detailed design and procurement process where we map out every manufacturer, get their designs, get their pricing, get their schedules, put together the full building as a detailed kit of parts, run some engineering to make sure everything is code conformant and compliant, and then provide a full delivery sequence and methodology of how the building will come together, both from a off-site manufactured perspective, but also the residual traditional on-site work. So the digging of the hole and painting of the walls, the things that still have to happen on-site with traditional trades. And that then gives the builder, the developer, a very clear line of sight on how fast that building can be delivered, what the financial impact on that development will be from delivering it much faster, and then what their opportunity is to recycle their capital in way less time.
And at that point, we would take that to some of our partner builders, right? And we got, I don't know, just 20 or 30 at the moment. Wayne's put together an organisation of 300 manufacturers, right? And we've got a whole lot of design partners. So it's an ecosystem. It takes, my experience is, and I was just showing you a picture of my granddaughter, it takes a community to raise a kid, and it takes a community to
a lovely photo too, I might say.
It takes a community to change the world. So, it takes a community. And when it's all like-minded, we bring that to our partner builders. So we're supplying good work at good margin to people who are like-minded.
From there, we then, compelling story that developers, want to adopt an alternative to what the traditional pathway would be. Then it's into an engagement. So we operate as a technology partner. We're not a builder. We're not a manufacturer. We're not a construction company. We operate as a technology partner and provide a license and ecosystem, as Murray just described, that will deliver that building. And that includes design partners. So, the likes of, for engineering as an example, are our primary design partner from an engineering perspective. So we bring designers to the table, we bring the manufacturing ecosystem to the table, and we bring our partner integrators to the table to deliver the building using our DMI methodology.
That's very, sorry to jump in, but it's very much worthwhile because it's all Australian product, right? So none of this is imported, none of it. And if you look at our backbone, we've just been down to Whyalla with the steel works because it's in transition again. We're after reliable steel from that source. I think currently we've got about 15 or 16,000 tons of steel that's coming because our main purpose of the backbone is from structural steel, primarily because it's manufacturable, right? And it's digitally accurate and those things. We're also doing some things with timber, but in the terms of tons of steel and looking at how social affordable housing could help, Whyalla and this all at once is pretty cool.
Yes. I should clarify. Are we talking, what sort of buildings are we talking about here? We're talking about residential buildings, commercial buildings, data centers. I think it's not single dwelling residential building. We're talking about high rises, right?
We're talking generally, yes, it's multi-story building.
Yes.
And if it's a residential building, it's 4 stories and up. If it's a data center, it could be one suspended level, but significantly higher performance structure. So we've done a lot of studies across many building typologies where we have a positive impact on the outcomes. And that is residential, hotels, student accommodation, commercial office buildings, heavy logistics, multi-story logistics buildings, and data centers, where the technology that we bring, both from an engineering and structural perspective, plus the kit of parts delivery methodology, is having a really positive impact on those developments.
We've actually delivered of those categories: residential, commercial,
Civil infrastructure.
Actually delivered, right? So it's not just studies; these are things that are delivered
that you've done. So can just to take that further, can you give us a case study, an example of where this technology has been used and its impact?
Yeah, sure. So I guess if we look at talking about residential, because that's where most of the public attention and media attention is at this point in time, when you look at a residential building, and a lot of the discussion's been around urban infill and transport-oriented developments and that mid-rise sort of product typology. A good example is a building that we built a couple of years ago now in Spring Hill. We didn't build it; we were involved in the project
In Queensland.
and that was an 8-story apartment building over 2 levels of car park, and that was an interesting project in that there was you don't want to be the savior of every project, but in this one it was a project that was in a spot of bother, and a good partner of ours was in strife because a developer went to the wall and wasn't paying them and that kind of thing. So they took over the development, and we helped them deliver the building in what would have been 16 months under a conventional process in 8.5 months. So got them in the project and out of the project in about half the time. Now that was a project that was purely focused at attainable housing. It was close to the hospital in Spring Hill in Queensland. It was 31 apartments. And it's now full of nurses and doctors that work in the hospital just down the street. But the important thing in that one, the structure went up very, very quickly. So the superstructure went up in 11 days. So from
11 days.
So from let that sink in for a second. But from a disruption perspective, it's a inner city, highly constrained, busy location. There was 5 people on site. The building was built off the back of the truck. There was nothing laying down. There was not lots of tradies with utes trying to get parking and get their tools out and get into the site every day. It was a delivery of material, assemblies coming off the back of the truck, which was manufactured out in Toowoomba, delivered to the site, picked up with a crane and put on site very, very quickly. So no noise around the site, no mess, no waste, no skip bins getting pulled off because we're not cutting and modifying product on site. Everything coming pre-finished, ready to go, up in 11 days.
And so when you use that example, and we'll use it for the purposes of this podcast, talking about the business, what you can do, what do the institutional players, legacy builders, developers think about that? Can they believe it? Is there skepticism?
Yeah, look, when we often walk at the front door, we've got a database now of all those development applications that Wayne mentioned. And we'll often walk in, or our sales guys will walk into a developer and say, look, that's just not possible. Until we actually show videos and show reality, it sort of comes across. And then a lot of people associate short time periods with perhaps less quality. And when you say, well, come and have a look, and Kevin Vedlaga, who's the proud owner of that building, takes them through, well after the building's been finished. And the process, during that DMI process, will be able to see just locally the kitchens, the bathrooms, and the quality is superior. Then you get the developer saying, can my builder do this? Say, of course, but look, he needs to be trained and like-minded and come along on the journey on a different road. And sometimes then it's a bit of a threat, right? So we say, no, look, just come and live the journey. And that's normally when people come around to our sort of thing.
And that's the journey you're on at the moment.
That's the journey
It's a change management journey, and it's an education journey for the industry as much as anything else.
As for us.
And for us, we get taught lessons every single day. But the interesting thing is that the willingness to change is often driven by external pressures, and the industry is under intense pressure at the moment. Right?
I want to
financial pressure, capacity constraints, trades availability. There's a real crunch point in the construction industry at the moment.
And psyche, Wayne. I mean, we're finding most of the resistance is it's not with manufacturers. We got a bunch of shareholders who are our manufacturers, not with designers, and the integrators, the new age builders, are mostly second generation. The one we've got, right? So the younger generation who sort of takes some of this in their stride is all over us, right? Yeah. And that's really cool because it makes me feel young, and it makes us all feel young. So and seeing that, you become like an attractor to other technology. Like there's a company in Perth who approached us; they couldn't sell what they do, and it's like a remote control crane that automatically picks things up and carries them around the site and adjusts the wind, and it's safer.
Yeah.
And I don't know, we'd have 20 or 30 of those sort of innovations that others are building, and we've become a bit of like the sticky pie for them. And so that makes it a lot of fun.
Can we touch on, gents, the project economics
Sure.
associated with your model?
Sure.
So my rudimentary understanding of this is it's faster, it's therefore cheaper, the quality is as good, if not better. So the headwinds for you are the fact that you're disrupting many industries, but surely that has to change when businesses look at the balance sheet and go, guys, we're crazy if we don't at least adjust for this or give these guys a go.
And again, I don't think we're so much disrupting now. We may have 8 years ago when we started, but now there's a lot of change coming, right? So there's philosophies like modern methods of construction, which is pretty well versed in speeches and stuff now. And we say, well, if it's modern, why aren't we doing it anyway?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of momentum now considering the way that we were on before. But if you look at, maybe when you get a, so a couple of, so we got some top level, developers, and we sign confidentiality agreements. So
Of course.
so these range from $300 million projects to $80 or $90 million projects. Perhaps on an $80 or $90 million, like the Soma project, what sort of numbers are we actually seeing come out?
Yeah, so there's a residential project we're talking about, which is 2 towers, 12 and 25 stories. Again, attainable accommodation. So it's about key worker accommodation, close to a hospital.
Queensland again.
Yes. And we have a few that are starting to form up around New South Wales as well. But it's a Queensland example again. And Queensland's an interesting one because it's now the most expensive place to build in the country. It is. Yep.
Is that because of the Olympics?
That's because of a whole heap of things going on in southeast Queensland at the moment.
Yes.
But and yes, the Olympics are part of that, but there's also a lot of demand. A lot of people move from the south. We've got an aging population, and people retire. They don't want to live in the cold in Victoria. They want to live on the Gold Coast, right? So
They need the heat.
yes, they need the heat. So, we've got this project which, in and of itself, didn't stack up with conventional methods. From a pure cost perspective, we're about $6 or $8 million ahead of what the conventional process would be.
Out of 80?
Out of 80. So you're talking 10% in terms of hard cost, and you're delivering that in half the time. So if that developer is making 15% or 20% margin on that, so let's say it's 20% and there's $15 or $18 million of profit in that, doing that in half the time, that's $15 or $18 million that you're earning twice as often with the same amount of capital. That's an interesting proposition for a repeat developer.
And everyone's happy because they're getting paid quicker too.
Well, that's right. And that was probably one of the biggest hurdles in this whole gambit was we're advocating, and we do, manufacture off-site. So conventional banking doesn't work that way. If in the construction industry, they only attend site through their quantity surveyors once a month and will only pay for things that are fixed assets on site. So we came up with Blink Chain, which is a different word, where a lot of our manufacturers who are part of our ecosystem, and our builders for that matter, get paid in 7 days. So we have a large banking institution that sits between the conventional bank and manufacturers. And our manufacturers don't, say a window manufacturer doesn't get one contract for 200 windows. He gets 200 contracts. And every time that window is finished and manufactured, he gets paid. He gets paid in 7 days. So it's a dramatic shift in both the risk profile for whoever's paying him, which might be a builder or might be the end user. The warranties that come out of that are significantly different. And they're all aggregated to give the end user a warranty statement from top to bottom. And that's very different from the pain that Sydney's gone through with something like Opal Tower, or the pain that he's gone through. And yes, we're early days. We're only 8 years in, It's a long road. But those sort of changes are dramatic. So.
And just on that, so that example of the payment system, that's at the core of what a digital twin that we build does, right? So those 200 contracts is actually 200 digital models. There's 200 digital twins for each assembly that in the factory, the manufacturer is verifying the physical product back against the digital representation of that product to conform that the product has been manufactured the way it was designed, that the geometry, and from our perspective, the most important thing is that the geometry is right, because then if the geometry is right in the factory, we know it's going to fit together when it gets designed. And that's the key, making sure that, one, the product exists. It's now a product as well, not material. So you've got a product that you can use as security. You can transfer title. You can use that product from it's now an immutable asset that follows with the digital twin.
Yeah, when we're not quite there yet, but where we're going digitally is you'll see that on your phone. So you have a digital model of the phone, and the windows will turn yellow when they've been manufactured. They'll turn green when they're delivered or so. So it's purely visual, and any owner or person with access to that, and the manufacturers themselves can see where things are up to. So it's a bit like Uber. You can see it traced to the side. So we're pretty committed to the digitalization of the construction industry.
It's transparency. So everything that we're talking about is transparency up the supply chain, and that's the big change for the industry. That there's parts of the industry today don't want that transparency, because that opacity is where the opportunity that's the opportunity for profiteering.
Yeah. That's their so-called secret sauce.
Yes.
I just you touched on Whyalla before. Obviously, it's been in the news. I imagine, Murray, you would have some robust thoughts on Whyalla, its future. Is there a role PT Blink can play at all in Whyalla?
Absolutely, and that's why we're down having discussions with Quartermentha at the moment, because they really need tons of steel, right? And domestic supply is so important. I think the numbers are roughly, and I'll stand corrected, but maybe you can make 1 million tons of steel out of an old style blast furnace, which is down there. Right? And that blast furnace needs to be kept going. And that's what the federal government stepped in and made sure happens, which is just terrific. For Blink, right, for us, we have short supply chains, so we want locally manufactured product. We don't want steel to come from Vietnam. We don't want steel to come from China, fundamentally because of time. So we didn't start out on a nationalistic cause, but we've ended up at one because of time.
Yeah.
So we want reliable supply of great quality steel, and Whyalla produces great quality steel. So if you look at the industry, Whyalla would see their clients as being distribution companies, whereas when you look at the whole of multi-story buildings in Australia, it's about a $52 billion industry, 98% of which is concrete. Now, we use concrete in our buildings. Don't get me wrong. There's not steel that we use less of it in our buildings. So we're not destroying an industry. What you are doing is converting buildings that didn't have any steel into them except for reinforcement into a high-intensity steel business that comes from Whyalla. And just some rough numbers on that was, so if we're in 4 years producing, which we believe, about 400,000 tons of steel, that gives you a whole new industry to supply to Whyalla.
So is it too long a stretch, guys, to say that PT Blink could have a material impact in potentially saving Whyalla?
Not a long stretch at all. If we decide to manufacture the living environment or buildings, not build them, then it's not a stretch at all.
Just think of the math for a second. So, Murray's pointed to about 2% of our buildings, 2 or 3% of our buildings today are steel frame buildings. Most of our high-rise or multi-story buildings are concrete frame, reinforced concrete or post-tension concrete structures. We need to build 1.2 million new homes in the next 5 years. There's about 5 or 6 tons of structural steel in every apartment that gets built using our technology. So 1.2 million of those is 5 to 6 million tons, right? Now, we're not going to have every one of those 1.2 million homes, but the maths are you convert 5 or 10% of the buildings that are built today into blink backbone or a steel frame building rather than a concrete frame building, that incremental, that's new volume that you're not competing with China. That's volume that is not there today that would then flow through a blast furnace in Whyalla. And again, at the same time, we're fixing the housing industry.
But we're doing it for time.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay, so if the economic driver is that time increases profit or profitability and productivity, it just all comes down to that, like Toyota. So Toyota made cars. My Toyota here, it's got 0.2% waste. 60% of our landfills are full of construction waste. So suddenly this time variable flows across everything. And that's why we think it's not material. That's why we have a seat with the current Sebastian Arms as the administrator for Whyalla. And he said, "You've given me a new market." And I said, "Yeah, terrific."
Watch this space.
Yeah, what's this?
I want to finish when you've sort of both touched on it, and it's housing affordability. You log on to any news site, pick up any paper or watch the TV or listen to the radio. Everyone is talking about housing affordability. Every government, state and federal, are talking about housing affordability. I would imagine you guys could play a crucial role in that. Are you having any discussions, meaningful or otherwise, with government at any level to talk about what you can do, how you can help, trials, pilot programs, anything?
Yeah, we've had a number of discussions with governments at various levels. Not, I guess, deep discussions, but enough, I guess, information to say there's a different way to deliver these things. And we firmly believe that time is the most undervalued commodity in the industry, and that's how you get to affordability, is to get that waste out of the process and deliver. A cubic meter of concrete is going to cost what a cubic meter of concrete does. A ton of steel costs what a ton of steel costs. But that wasted time and material that goes through the conventional process is what we chase out of the delivery.
Yeah, I'll be more specific of that as well. Look, we're very frustrated because we're an Australian technology company. We're not a builder. We're not a country. We're Australian tech, born and bred here. We sit with NVIDIA in the US. I give lectures at Stanford, right? But the adoption of technology in Australia, even at government levels, they say things to us like, "We can't pick a winner." We go, "We're not asking you to pick a winner. We're asking you to look at a technology way of helping." And government is difficult, right? Because in our experience, because of that sort of perceived barrier, we just said, "Look, just be an early adopter. Just join with the Catholic Church or join with someone who can put up a low cost and just try it. Give it a go. What's the downside? It's all Australian made. It's Australian technology." We've hit some barriers, and maybe we're not very good at dealing with government. We're entrepreneurial. That's what we do, right? But it's difficult. And we've had some bad experiences where schools, New South Wales, for instance, we're in the press on this particular issue. Some individuals, and they decided it's such a great idea, they're going to do it themselves. And that's hurt. So I don't mind putting that out there because we deal with it every day. Government, we would love to have a sit down, a proper conversation about what this means.
Well, to both of you, what would your message be, just following up on that, your message to government about what it is you could deliver?
Faster, safer, better. Housing, absolutely. I mean, the fundamental issue that government has is that they need more housing delivered in less time. You can't do that with conventional constructions. We just don't have the capacity. Full stop. We've got the Hunger Games going on for the Olympics in Queensland because we've got all the tradies digging tunnels for rail lines and bridges. They're going to move to stadiums, but they need 40,000 hotel beds. How are they going to deliver that? They can't do it the conventional way, yet the mindset is, we're going to keep going the same way we did yesterday. We need to actually take a different approach, and we have a different approach.
Yeah, and we hugely respect trades. Hugely. Carpentry is noble for trades, bro. Absolutely noble. But there's enough work for those guys. Let's look at the incremental difference, and we think we can help. We are not the entire answer. Never will be. But we can certainly help. And just having the ear for that part of this podcast might end up there.
Well, let's hope so. We know they're listening. So,
Actually, I think one thing that is a great byproduct. We mentioned waste a little bit before, but it's not about displacing jobs. We're about creating jobs. And our math has that for every apartment that's delivered, there's 1.5 full-time manufacturing jobs that's created. Right? That means that tradies can keep doing what tradies have to do on site while we're manufacturing the parts that we can manufacture off-site, and we're liberating construction by manufacturing, local manufacturing.
And women in construction.
Well said. Gents, we're out of time. Wayne Larsen, Murray Ellen from PT Blink, thanks for coming into the studio today, and all the very best in the future. Thank you.
And thank you, Justin, for the opportunity. Just fantastic.